Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Super Wildcard Weekend recap, which means there was 6 games and 3 more teams that are now preparing for the 2023 NFL Draft instead of the 2023 Super Bowl. Including me, many other fans are now also preparing for the 2023 draft instead of cheering on their teams, but we'll get more to that later. Since there was no real news that came out of this week, since it's true in the weeds, in the thick of it, playoffs, we're just going to jump straight onto the game, starting with one of the 2 Saturday games with the 7-seed Seattle Seahawks. Wow, say that 3 times fast. That was a tough one.
That is a tongue twister. Wow.
Heading to San Francisco to take on the 49ers, and the 49ers handily taking them out by a score of 41-23. Now, this was actually a game because if you look at the halftime score here, it was 17-16 Seattle going into half. So Seattle actually was running with it. They were keeping up with the Niners. But then the Niners picked up a quick score in the third, and then they actually kind of shut them out for the rest of the third, too.
Yeah.
But it just broke open in the fourth, to say the least. The Niners totally ran away with it. Christian McCaffrey was just too much for that poor Seattle run defense to deal with. And the rest was history from there.
Yeah, not just Christian McCaffrey, but Deebo Samuel. He also had a fourth quarter 75-yard touchdown run to help really put the game away. And that was really the big play that helped seal the thing for the 49ers. And that defense was able to keep it together and keep the Seahawks from scoring again into the second half.
That is now an 11-game win streak, counting the 10-game regular season win streak and now the 1 game in the playoffs. So crazy by Brock Purdy and the 49ers.
And it has been every game that Christian McCaffrey has started since the 49ers acquired him.
Believe it or not, an all-star running back is a game changer when he stays healthy. Who'd have thunk it?
And the crazy thing is their 3 of their 4 losses are to the Bears, the Falcons, and the Broncos. So somewhere there's a formula to beat the 49ers, but I'm not sure how those teams have figured it out.
Sounds like the 49ers just under-preparing and beating themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's crazy. Next up, we had the Saturday night game in the AFC this time with the Los Angeles Chargers heading to Jacksonville to take on the Jaguars, and the Jaguars picking up a comeback win by a score of 31-30, and the Chargers losing in typical heartbreak Chargers fashion.
Just like the Chargers normally do. It was another close game that really shouldn't have been when the Chargers jumped out to a 27-0 lead off of 4 interceptions from Trevor Lawrence in the first half alone. And that was a playoff record.
That is tough, to say the least. But Lawrence lit up in the second half, and more than anything, that Jaguars defense just became unstoppable. They only allowed 3 points in the third quarter and a big old goose egg in the fourth quarter, which allowed momentum to flip sides, and it allowed that Jaguars offense to keep it rolling. The Chargers, man, I say it every time, they are the Minnesota Vikings of the AFC. I root for them so much because of that sole reason. And they just continuously do stuff like this. I mean, we'll get to it, but spoiler alert, the Vikings are in the same boat now with the Chargers, but the Chargers just did it in such a more gut-wrenching fashion. You hate to see it.
They are now the first team to lose a playoff game when winning the turnover battle 5-0.
5-0. I thought the Jags defense had to at least get a couple of turnovers. I didn't get to watch all of this game. So they must have just been having 3 and outs everywhere.
3 and outs, and I think the Chargers went for it on 4th a time or 2 and didn't get it. So
you look at that Chargers team, and it is just all-stars everywhere. I can't believe
they were weak, though. They lost Mike Williams. They lost DeAndre Carter during the game. They were beaten up, and I said this last week. I said that was why I picked the Jaguars, because the Chargers were kind of beaten up, and it proved to be the difference.
I just feel for the Chargers so much. But moving on to the Sunday game, starting with the AFC 7 versus 2 seed with the Miami Dolphins heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills. And the Bills just barely eking out a win as that 2 seed by a score of 34-31.
Yeah, this was really the game of the week, and especially the performance by Skylar Thompson out there for the Miami Dolphins, their third string quarterback who got pressed into playing, and he played very well for most of the game. He had, I believe it was 2 touchdowns.
That sounds about right.
And an interception. So, I mean, of course he had the mistakes, and he played like a good third string quarterback in my opinion. He kept the Dolphins in it just long enough. The Dolphins defense was able to get a few turnovers off of Buffalo to really keep it close, and it just wasn't quite enough for the Dolphins to overcome.
Yeah, I actually only really watched the first quarter of this game and then the last 5 minutes, but I only watched the first quarter because the Bills jumped out to a nearly automatic 14-0 lead. And in your head, in a lot of people's head, and in mine, of course, is well, this game's already over. It's the 2 versus 7. It's the mighty Buffalo Bills in Orchard Park going against Skylar Thompson. But then all of a sudden, I checked my phone a little bit later, and the Dolphins were borderline winning. They were in control of this game. They really had a chance. Yeah. But at the end of the day, the Bills did just end up being a little bit too much. It was a decent game by Josh Allen. He continues to be really questionable with his decisions, which, last year, Josh Allen, he really just fixed that part of his game. You almost saw no questionable decision. You saw very little turnovers. And I don't know if he just got a little confidence last year from that or what exactly it is. Maybe defense is just figuring him out a little bit more.
Yeah.
But I've noticed this year, sometimes he just throws interceptions that are what are you doing? And he's been getting away with it facing these worser teams. And now, of course, going against the 7th seed in the AFC playoff race. But now he's going to start facing really good teams, including the Cincinnati Bengals next week. So you better really start to clean that up.
And this will be the second game of the first 3 where the team scored 30-plus points and won the turnover battle and lost.
Wow, that's
the
tough.
Jags also, or the Chargers also scored 30 and obviously had a 5-0 turnover. And I think the Dolphins had it 4-3, I believe.
That sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, the Bills made a lot of mistakes that kept the Dolphins in it, so they're going to have to clean that up.
It's just heartbreaking for a team to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of heartbreak and jumping back into the NFC this time, we had our middle Sunday game with the 6th seed New York Giants heading to Minnesota to take on the Vikings as the 3 seed. And the Giants pick up a road upset win by the score of 31-24. Now, I'm not going to say that this was an amazing game by the Vikings, but I don't think the Vikings really played that bad overall. The Giants just came to win, man. They showed up, they played well all 4 quarters, and where the Vikings really lost this game, in my opinion, was in the trenches on both sides. Of course, you have to give a little slack to their offensive line. Garrett Bradbury in his first game back after missing over a month, a rookie right guard in Ed Ingram, our backup right tackle in Oli Udoh, going against a pretty stellar Giants defensive line and defense in general. But what I'm really disappointed in more than anything for the Vikings is the defensive line. We had Harrison Bryant and Dalvin Tomlinson, a former Giant, in the middle playing a type of revenge game for himself. And then 2, what I thought were elite edge rushers going into the season, and at times in the season, especially in 4th quarter of games, were elite edge rushers in Zadarius Smith and Danielle Hunter. But none of those guys showed up. Saquon Barkley ran all over us. I want to say we only had about 2 sacks total, which the New York Giants don't have a bad offensive line by any means, but they're definitely
very young offensive
They're
line.
Definitely nothing special. A 2020 guy and a rookie as those bookends tackles, as Callan just mentioned, with them being young. But there were just so many things about this game, especially the defensive line that disappointed me, but then a lot of small things. The next biggest thing being the play calling. Very questionable play calling, and there was probably a handful, 4 or 5 drives that had at least one play where we ran a play that just made no sense. We had that drive in the 3rd quarter where we were moving down the field well, and then we randomly threw a bomb on second down, which should have been intercepted, but luckily we got bailed out and didn't get intercepted, but totally stalled our drive. We had the drive early in the game in the first quarter where it was a 3rd and 1, and against the Giants defensive line setup, I think an inside zone would have easily got the first down. But instead we ran a pass back from Justin Jefferson to Kirk Cousins in which he tried to run for the first down and ended up losing yardage. So that of course stalled that drive. And then the big one, the end of the game on a 4th and 8, Cousins threw a 3-yard out to TJ Hawkinson, which was just mind-blowing to me in the moment. As I look back on it now, he was under huge pressure and he had nobody else open, so he just took the check down to get the completion. If Hawkinson is able to break that one-on-one tackle, he not only gets the first down, but probably another 10 or 15 yards after that. So I don't hate that decision and I don't hate that play call quite as much now. I still don't love the decision. I've really come to terms with that more than the play call. But overall, props to the Giants. That's really what it came down to, was they played a hell of a game. I said it to Callan a bunch of times. If we keep forcing Daniel Jones to win this game with his arm, he's going to make a mistake, and then all we have to do is take advantage of it. And he really didn't make a mistake.
He never did make that mistake.
I thought for sure if we could force Daniel Jones to pass, we could pick up a win. And we did, for the most part, force Daniel Jones to pass. But he took that and ran and made us pay for it.
Yeah, and like I said, I think last week is that defensive line for the Giants was going to be the key battle to focus on for this game. And like you said, the Vikings just lost that battle.
Big time. It was bad. We were getting pressure from the middle with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. Kayvon Thibodeau was getting us off the edge. Linebackers were coming in and getting in there automatically. Wink Martindale, props to you, because whatever you did, you tore apart our offensive line.
Yeah.
Now moving on to the Sunday night football game and back to the AFC with the 6 versus 3 matchup over there, and the Baltimore Ravens heading to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals, and the Bengals secure the home win by a score of 24-17, with the big game-changing play here being a 99-yard fumble recovery touchdown by Sam Hubbard when the Ravens were knocking on the door to take the lead.
Yeah, and that was obviously the play of the game. It was the difference maker, the momentum changer, whatever you want to call it. It was definitely the big play that changed the momentum of this game. When the Ravens played pretty good for, again, being down to their second string quarterback and partially their third string. I don't think Anthony Brown ended up playing like they said he was going to. At least I didn't see him.
When they said that, I thought it might have been a little bit of a smoke and mirror.
Yeah, but they played Snoop Huntley for the majority of the game, and he played pretty well. They got him out to a 10-3 lead, and they were driving down there to take the lead before that big fumble, and he was just short of the goal line. They took a long time to look at it, but the ball never did break the plane. And luckily for the Bengals, they were able to capitalize off that.
You know, I feel like any playoff loss is gut-wrenching for the team who lost, but I feel like this Wildcard Sunday is just stacked with true gut-wrenching losses for these teams. I mean, you look at Baltimore, probably shouldn't even really made it in the playoffs with all the injuries that they had throughout the year.
Yeah.
Lamar Jackson missed over a month. J.K. Dobbins missed a lot of the season. Their backup running back, Gus Edwards, missed a lot of the season. Sporadic injuries here and there on that defense. But then you're in Cincinnati against a division rival, and you're about to take a touchdown lead in the game with a simple QB sneak. And then that happens. It just had to be a stab in the heart for any Ravens fan.
Yeah. Ooh, that was got to be a tough one to swallow. And that also became the longest fumble return for a touchdown in playoff history. So a lot of history making games this week.
I suppose all losses are equal in retrospect, but I'll take the way the Vikings lost rather than losing that way any day, because God, I would just almost throw up, I feel like. Maybe that's a little too much football fan in me, but that would be tough. And then finally, we're going to end it with the final NFC matchup and the Monday Night Football game of the Dallas Cowboys as the 5 seed heading to the 4 seed Tampa Bay Buccaneers and picking up a pretty well dominant win by a score of 31-14.
Yeah, and there should have been even more if Brett Maher could make his extra points. He's the first. Here we go with history again. The first kicker in NFL history to miss 4 extra points in a row in a playoff game and have their team win. So that is another history-making moment.
I'm pretty sure he's just the first kicker to miss 4
I
extra
think he
points
might
in a
just
row
be the 4 too,
in general, regardless of time
in
of the
playoff
season.
history.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure he's the first to miss, at least for playoff games for sure. He's
definitely for playoffs. Yeah,
and it might be NFL history all around. But really, Cowboys just came out on fire. Dak came out. He played probably the best game of the season so far. 5 total touchdowns for Dak, 4 passing, 1 rushing. I said last week that the Cowboys were going to come out and score a lot of points because they got kind of shut out in the week before. And, it's so facto, that's how it happened. The Buccaneers just could not get the offense rolling at all. Kind of the way that they've gone all season long, where they struggled at the first 3 quarters and then showed signs of life in the 4th quarter. And Brady tried to do his Brady thing. He tried to bring them back, but he just ran out of time.
Yep. Not to beat a dead horse here with the Brett Maher thing, but just another fun little fact to stack on top of that. He missed the final extra point of their Week 18 matchup against the Washington Commanders. So technically, if you string those games together, he missed 5 extra points in a row. So brutal, to say the least. But luckily, he did knock 1 extra point in on the Cowboys' final touchdown. Mm-hmm. So just the littlest bit of confidence booster going into next week. But
makes a difference.
Gosh, now you're in the playoffs. You can't really switch kickers now. There's way too much pressure.
You don't want your kicker to get the yips, though.
You just gotta give him a chance to come back around. But yeah, I'm gonna be dead honest. I watched none of the second half of this game. I pretty well knew it was gonna be a blowout to start, and then they went into half up 18-0, and the Bucs just looked dead, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And the Cowboys were the dead opposite. They were firing on all cylinders. So not much more to say about that. It was true domination fashion by the Cowboys.
Yeah, the Buccaneers got the onside kick after the 2-minute warning, and Brady just missed them on a deep pass. Missed Mike Evans just on of his fingertips. It could have brought the game to within 10 with the 2-point conversion. But
two possession game in 2 minutes.
Yeah,
that's still just too much.
Just with Brady, everybody would have been thinking, "Oh man, here we go."
Just that voice in the back of your head, like, is he gonna do it again? Really? Is it about to happen?
But nope, he ran out of time.
But it didn't happen. So thank you all so much for watching our Wildcard Weekend recap. Look out tomorrow for our divisional round predictions. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.